Hello, friends. This is a video where I hope to kind of describe how to get started using audio modulation system, kind of what it is, and I'm going to try to give two examples of using it. So, yeah, we'll try at least two examples. I don't want this to be a super long video, so I'll get started right away. So here I have the third-person template. It's a brand new project. Hold on. This is go away. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I was having a thing on my screen. It's a brand new project, which means we need to activate the audio modulation module. Okay, so we go to plugins. We find audio, and then we see audio modulation. Conversely, we could search for audio modulation. And it is worth noting that it is currently in beta, but there has been a major refactor of the audio modulation system. If this is, we're in 4.26 preview 1, so there's probably bugs in it. Because it's a brand new refactor, and nothing is using it right now. I used the old version of the audio modulation system on the UE5 demo, and based off of the feedback that I gave Rob, who was the primary developer working on the audio modulation system, we came up with a refactoring, and he did some awesome work in essentially making it a little bit easier to use. So what that means is if you have already been using audio modulation, it's all going to get broken. And I'm sorry, but that's sort of what it is to work in the beta plugin. Stuff is still up in the air. And so hopefully this is an improvement in the workflow. And so, yeah. If you're new to it, which is, I imagine, most people, then yeah. So let's enable it. Boom. Are you aware this is beta? And then we go, yes. We are sure that we still want to enable it. And then we got to restart, and we can look at my nice Ghibli backgrounds. Okay, cool. So now it's enabled, and if you look under sounds, there's a new category called modulation, and here we can see the 5 main asset types. From the top is control bus and control bus mix, a modulation generator, a modulation parameter, and then a parameter patch. And essentially what the modulation system is meant to do is to create a modulation matrix that allows us to do much more transparent parameter modulation. Primarily, right now the goal is volume mixing. Okay, so there is an older system called the sound mix system, which you can see under classes, and the sound class mix system, or the sound mix system as it used to be called. This is a clarification. Sound mix. The sound class mix system used the sound classes as a categorization system for mixing, and it does logical mixing, and it uses the sort of sound class hierarchy, which is, a tree of parent and children classes. Now, the sound class system, as mixing in actual games, in actual full-fledged games, using a hierarchical classification system like sound classes, like sound class mixes. What it does is it lends itself to a really complicated tree structure. And the reason is because you get these situations where you have, say, like a particular class of sounds that straddle two different categorizations, right? They're like, oh, this is maybe it's a weapon, but it's also this weird kind of weapon or something like that. And that means you need to make some brand new classification. And the problem with that, as sitting in a hierarchy, what that means is that the tree gets super complicated, because you have like, you start out with like all the basic sort of simple stuff. You're like, oh, here's my master sound class, here's my, sound effects class, my music class, my VO class, right? And then as you start becoming more and more specific in your layers, at the end of it, you can get these really gnarly graphs where, you are, say, like a dozen layers deep, and you've got like literally a sound class for like one asset. And it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare because what happens is when you start mixing in a hierarchy, the result becomes increasingly obfuscated the more children you add. Okay? This is just sort of a general problem. You have the same problem in your DAW. For example, let's say you have a bunch of submixes in your DAW, and you add a compressor high up, and then you add a compressor, you have a master compressor, and then you have a compressor in the middle somewhere. What the result of all those compressors are, and all of the gain staging that's in between that, becomes increasingly more difficult to predict. This is sort of a general problem with tree-based or hierarchical-based mixing. It's just an issue with that sort of logical approach to it, because and then sound class mixes increasingly obfuscate the problem, because you can affect mixes that have children inheritance or not. And so then you can have situations where you're like affecting the mix on some sort of class in the middle of your graph, and it's sometimes some mixes might be affecting the children and some mixes might not. And then you're like, well, this is, sound effects, weapon, character, or NPC, and then some other subcategories, and then the categorization is just sort of out of control. And what that means is at the end of the project, when you're actually doing your mixing, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to debug. It's just really difficult to predict what happens. And there is some logical capping, and so that's sort of a danger zone. So this is really messy. It's very difficult to debug, and it just creates problems at the end of the project. At the beginning of the project, it seems very simple and straightforward, because your sound class graph is simpler at the beginning of the project, and your mix needs are much simpler at the beginning of the project. But when you get to the end of the project and you're trying to figure out like why you're increasing the volume on one particular sound and it's just not getting louder, then you've got an issue. And that happens all the time in your DAWs. If you've got a bunch of gain staging and a bunch of compressors and stuff like that, from your source through multiple submix stages all the way down to your master, you'll have these weird tweaks of volume where you're like, oh, I need to boost that sound. That sound needs to come out more and more and more and more. And then suddenly you've got weird like gains where you're like plus 32 dB, and that's just insane. That's literally insane. Like that should never happen. Okay. So it's really easy to get out of control when you've created a really complicated mixing graph. And it's further obfuscated when you have logical mixing, which is what sound classes and sound class mixes attempted to do, right? Logical mixing. And what I mean by logical mixing is it's not actually processing. Each of those stages is not a process. What it does is the logical mix is basically a scalar multiplier, where it's just like, okay, multiply this volume by the volume of the children, by the volume of the children, all the way down to where that particular sound is. And then that sound, that end result is what gets applied to the sound at the actual gain stage. And it's a logical mixing is really important for games because it's a very efficient approach to gain staging. You have all of these volume effects essentially on your sound, and you get to do them in a single multiplication run at the end, right before it goes into the other important stuff, other actual DSP processes. So that's it's a really important and really efficient way of doing volume mixing in terms of CPU power, in terms of resources. And so anyway, so the audio modulation system attempts to sort of free you from the hierarchical graph. That's the main goal. And what it does is instead is a matrix. And what this allows you to do is to create, say, control buses that are categorized in any way that you want. And you can set it up so it can be very simple and straightforward, where a sound has a one-to-one relationship with its control bus, its classification, or where what I mean by that is you could have a sound where it's a weapon and it'll be use the weapon control bus and keep it simple. Or if you wanted it more complex, then you could have a situation where this weapon is influenced by multiple buses, and so that kind of leaves everything open in terms of the way the buses actually affect an individual source, and very flexible. And it also means that it's very simple for us to debug, because we can just throw a table on the screen of all of the control buses and all the different things that are affecting the volume of those control buses, and then the final result. So you can be like, why is this sound so quiet, or why is this sound so loud? And then if you're using the audio modulation system as your mix system, then you can just look at the graph and you can see, oh, look at this. Here's why. These are the categories that are influencing that sound or whatever. Then you can just see the result and you're like, oh, I see. It's because of these effects, or these mix, or this mix is affecting in this such and such a way, or whatever. And it's still in beta, and we hope to continue to improve it. And more than that, to improve the visualization of things happening so that we can debug it in more effective ways. But this is an opportunity to just sort of get familiar with it. So that's basically the goal here. And I said I wanted a short videos, and here I go rambling about what everything is. But okay, let's get down to it. So there's the control bus, and the control bus is basically like a single fader, right? You could think of a control bus like a VCA on a bunch of on a set of sounds. So this would be your classification system, and I'll get into that a little bit more. And then your control bus mix is basically a snapshot of scalars that affect a set of control buses at once, right? Then you have a modulation generator, and a modulation generator is basically things that affect or modulate control buses, like an LFO. All right. Then you have a modulation parameter, and this is where audio modulation as a system could have been just called parameter modulation and been more generic. But we made it. It's our team's plugin, and so we're first classing audio. But there is nothing to say that you couldn't have a control bus that doesn't just control volume, it controls something else, some other parameter, like activity levels, or a parameter that controls, like fear, which is the classic dead space parameter. So, or day-night cycle, right? Like it could be the time of day. It's just a parameter. And so this lets you define brand new parameter types, essentially, and how control buses mix together when they're combined based on that type of parameter. And it also means that if you're like working with a team, like say you're working on an actual project that has engineering support, a programmer could build a system that actually creates for this system brand new modulation parameter types, and then you can use the audio modulation system to also control that stuff, right? And then you have a parameter patch, and a parameter patch is a little bit like the settings object that we had previously in the previous configuration. But basically what it is a parameter patch is a complex patch. So we can, right now, and you'll see when I start setting it up, because I'm just going to set it up for volume mixing as an example. But you can see that there are sort of first-class patches. And, we've added a modulation section to sound base, which is sound wave and sound cues, and that there's like a volume parameter that you can mix into, and this stuff has already been first classes. You can plug a control bus directly into it, or you can plug in a parameter patch. And the parameter patch is basically a mix of control buses. So you can think of it as a mult, or like going into a modular synthesizer. And a modular synthesizer is probably the best way to think of all this. A control bus is essentially a control patch cable. All right. With a multiple in and a multiple out. Right. So you can think of the parameter patch as a mult on the input of your modulation destination. So you can have multiple control buses influencing one parameter. That's the idea. But you don't have to use that. If you're just like, you just want to keep it simple, you can skip this part entirely. And that's one of the major refactors we wanted, is we wanted to be able to just plug a control bus directly into the parameter if possible. And yeah, that was great. So so let's get to it. I've got the third person template project. It's brand new, it's fresh. If we go into starter content and audio, we can see gigantic thumbnails. Let's make that smaller. Thank you. Okay, and we have some simple music. We have background ambience, and we have some, we got some fire or something like that. So I'm gonna set up a little scene here real quick. We're gonna keep it super simple. I'm gonna throw the starter music in the scene, and the background sound cue in the scene, and I'll add to this little question mark deal an audio component for fire. So let me actually just do this the snappy way. So I'll click on the fire cue, and then I'll add audio fire cue. Boom. Okay, so now I'll save this. When I play, okay, we've got loud music, we've got loud ambient audio, we've got loud fire. The fire is a 3D source, the music and the ambience are 2D sources. Perfect. We're ready to go. All right, so now let's go back into starter content, and we will create right in here. I'm just gonna put it right in here. We're gonna keep it super simple. What I want to start out with is maybe something very basic, like modulation. We'll do a sound effects control bus. Oop, I'm saving it. We will do. Oops. We will do the music control bus. Okay. And if we double click on the control bus, we will see an input where we can add the parameter type. So this lets us define the type of parameter this particular control bus is doing. And this is important because the type of parameter will determine how we map our parameter values to our destinations. Okay, so to give some context, all of the data inside the control bus is normalized. Okay, and you can kind of think of this in the way that modular synthesis works. If you're familiar with that, you have like a voltage range, and at the destination, at the modulation destination, you usually define what is the voltage range, how does the voltage range map to the actual parameter that you're controlling, right? So for us, these are going to be volume parameters, and what that means is it's going to be able to map between normalized linear mapping to a dB nonlinear mapping. Just like with frequency, you might have different ranges and different relationships between those values, right? So dB and frequency are both logarithmic, but they're different kinds, right? And so that's basically what you get with parameter, the parameter typing. Now there are some parameters that are built in that are available, but what you need to do is you need to go to the view options and select show engine content. Okay, and then once you go in there, you'll see some basic ones, like for example modulation. Okay, so our music bus control bus is volume type, and our sound effects control bus is a volume type. And also here you can bypass it if you're like, oh, I want a generic type, or you can do things like override the address for mixing. So there's an address system that you can plug into to do procedural mixing. And this is really powerful because we've explored things like hooking this up to Open Sound Control and doing external mixers. I have hooked this up previously to a MIDI controller, and so this is if you need to give it a separate special address name for mixing. And then you can also just add a generator that automatically starts doing things to this, modulating this control bus value, like an LFO. But we're not going to get into that yet. I just want to keep it simple here. Music and sound effects. Okay, very good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a control bus mix. This will be our default bus mix. Okay, and this will have two. We'll have the music and we'll have the sound effects. And here you can see each of the elements of this array, the value in dB, and then the normalized value. And the value in dB and the normalized value. And this should actually be 0. That's a bug. That should be 0. That should be 0. It just didn't get updated properly. But this lets you either tweak the normalized version or the dB version. And it is automatically detecting that this is a volume parameter type, which is very cool. All right. So if I had some other type, like let's say I had one just as a quick example, modulation. Let's say I had a control bus that was time of day. We'll just try it, see if Rob did this. So we go to time of day as the type, and then we could add it time of day. And here we have, let's see, normalized, 0 through 24, right? 0 through 24. Pretty cool. All right, let's, do we not have, Rob forgot to delete this, so I'll have to. That'll be feedback for Rob. All right. So I'm just gonna trash it and re-add the array elements because I do not have the. I cannot delete an element. All right. It is preview 1, people. Okay. Okay, and then what we'll do is we will go to our music queue. We'll go down to modulation. We will say we want to modulate the volume, and we want to modulate it using the music control bus. Then we will go to our fire queue. We will go down to modulation. Boop, 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 boop. We will say, we want to turn on volume modulation, and we want to modulate volume using the sound effects control bus. And then the other thing we had was our background queue, our starter background queue. So we want to scroll down to volume. Yes, we want to modulate volume, and we want to modulate it using the sound effects control bus. Okay, so then what we need to do is we just need to activate the mix. So we've got a mix. Right now there's nothing going on in it. We just need to activate it. All right. So let's go to our level blueprint. And I'm just going to use level blueprint because it's fast and easy. But if you were working on a full-on project, you might want to make a little mix manager. Okay. So on begin play. Activate control bus mix. There we go. Activating the control bus mix will automatically activate all of its associated control buses. And when I press, when I press play, and I go to au.debug.sound modulators, and I say turn on, then we can see our 2 buses, and we can see our mix. Okay, cool. Now, let's say I just want to tweak these values, all right? So I'm going to hit play, and then I'm going to just maybe drop. There we go. Okay, so we've got a mix. Okay. Maybe I want a little bit more on music. Let's do a -3 dB, and then let's go -2 on this. Okay. Now, it might be that I want to make it so that the sound effects, some ambient sound effects, and the background ambience are treated a little differently, right? So I can create a couple of other control buses. So let's do that. Sound. Well, I'll just copy these. Let's duplicate. I'm doing Control W to duplicate, and then we'll call this one our amb BG control bus. Always make a naming scheme instead of winging it, as I am doing here. And then we want say POI, like the fire is a point of fire. Control bus. Control bus should probably be the prefix. Anyway, so for my fire cue, I actually want I want it to also be affected by sound effects, right? Similarly, my ambient background, I also want to be affected by the sound effects. So I'm going to, instead of just plugging the new one in, I'm just going to create a patch. So this will be my POI fire patch. Or it could be, if I wanted to be even more, this is where you can start getting specific, right? This is where we start accumulating the different effects. So let's say it's specifically the campfires. And let's say this instead of being POI fire, it's like POI environment sounds, right? We'll do env. So this is like, spatialized environment sounds, and then this is specifically for the campfires. All right, and so we're going to open up our patch, and then what we're going to do is we're going to enable modulation on this patch, and we are going to say this is a volume parameter type, and then we're going to add 2 influencers, right? This is for our campfire, so we want one to be the sound effects control bus, and we want another one to be our POI environment control bus, right? So both of these will impact our patch volume, okay? And you can do cool things like change the relationship between these values, or you can do things like sample and hold, where instead of having a continuous relationship, it's just when it's activated, which can be pretty powerful, right? So there's a lot more flexibility here. You can kind of imagine it somewhat like a modular synth. Okay, so now for our fire cue, it will just take the campfire patch instead of the sound effects control bus. See, here's our campfire patch. Okay. And then we will create our another patch. Let's just I'll another parameter patch, and this will be our ambient air patch. Okay. And it will be, again, it's a volume type. And right now we just have 2 that would influence it. One is going to be our sound effects control bus, and the other one is going to be our ambient BG control bus. Cool. And then we go to our starter cue, and we plug in the patch instead. So, and then what you'll find is that now when I want to change what influences this class of sounds, I just go directly to here, to the class, and I just say I plug in whatever should affect this. Okay. Now our default bus mix can also include a couple other control buses, right? We've got our ambient BG control bus, and we also have our environmental point of interest control bus. So now when we press play, right? Let's say I want to just kill the music right now. And I just want to listen to the relationship between the fire and the air, right? So we'll say, you know, fine, let's go -3 on the sound effects just to kind of even it out. Just give it a nice, give you a little headroom. And then on the ambient BG, we could probably lower that to make it a little bit more gentle. And then the fire could probably be tweaked a little bit as well, right? Because, you know, and this is going to be kind of on distance. Like right here, I'm pretty far away from it. So let's go down to maybe half, something like that. So this will be our default bass mix, right? Okay, and then oops, let's also where's my default mix? Let's bring the music back, and we'll give it that -3 headroom. But here I could actually maybe more accurately mix it, you know, to -6, something like that. Okay. It just loops like that. Cool. All right, now let's create another mix. So this will be Modulation Control Bus mix. And this will be our user bus mix. Okay. And this we'll keep it super simple, right? We only want to give the user control over the sound effects bus and the music bus. That's it. And we'll fix these defaults here. Okay. So now we've got a user mix. Now we want to be able to influence the user mix. And what we'll do is in our level blueprint, we will activate the user mix. So I'm just going to copy this function call and select the user mix. So the user mix is activated immediately. And when let's make a quick and dirty user what do I want to say? What do I want to call this? User mix widget. Fine, we'll do that. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm gonna make a little quick mixer. This will have full alpha 0. And it will be size to content. Okay, and then we'll grab the blur, which I think is cool looking. And we'll add that to that. And we'll make the blur strength 10. And then I'm going to add a horizontal box. And then I will add a how do I want to do this? A vertical box. Oh, I did a wrap with? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to add it to it. Okay, vertical box. And then inside the vertical box, I'm going to add slider. and some text. Okay. And we will just push the text up to the top. The slider will be vertical. Let's actually wrap the slider with a size box. And the size box, we will override to be 75 by 100. Or sorry, not 100. Let's do 400. There we go. And then the slider style. The bar thickness will make 10. And then we will go with 15, 50, 15, 50, 15, 50 for all the different handle types. And then give it some nice padding, 10. And we'll give the text padding as well, 10. And we'll make the text centered instead of fill. Actually, the size box, let's make this 100 width. And then we will make this text box say sound effects. And the slider we will call sound effects volume slider. Solder slider. And this whole setup we will duplicate. And this one is going to be called music. And this is going to be called the music volume slider. Cool. Now we've got two sliders. And we will add just quick, dirty on value changed for each of them. Right? Okay. All right, and then what we need to do is we will create a modulation. We will create a bus mix stage. So this will be our sound effects control bus, and we'll just pass. The sliders are already normalized volume, so we'll just pass that directly in. And this is fine. This is responsive enough. And then we will set modulation. This one, set control bus mix. This is our user bus mix, and we'll just put that right into the stage. And then similarly, we're going to do the same thing, except for this will be the music bus. Boom, boom. Easy peasy. Now, we just want to add this to the viewport. So what we'll do is I'll actually make this so that this can take, to keep this simple, we'll just make it so that it can take player input, and then I'll do something like input tab, and then we will create widget, promote variable, my user mix widget. Sorry, this should be player controller, and the class widget is going to be our user mix widget. Cool. And then what we'll do is actually just put this here, make it validated, and then I'm just going to actually do this. So what it will do is when I hit tab, it will first check, hey, is this widget valid? If it's not, create it. So there's that. And then if it is, then we'll add a viewport. There we go. So if it's valid, I'll add it to the viewport. And then we just want to set set UI to game in UI, and the widget to make in focus is that widget. And then we will set show mouse cursor to true. Boom. And then we will have it so this flip-flops. All right. So when it flips, it adds it to the screen, and when it flops, remove widget. It's sort of nuclear option, but it's not bad. It's not terrible. We will set game mode. So we'll go to the input mode back to game only. Right? And then we will hide our mouse cursor. We will set the show to false. Okay. Yep. Good. So, when I hit play, I hit tab. There's my mixer. Look at that clean blur. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Is I forgot to default these values at 1. And actually, let's make it so that when we construct this widget, I think we can. Let's see if we can get values. I don't know if we can. I haven't tried this. Let's just see what we got. We got some color stuff. We don't care about the style stuff. Activate, create, deactivate, set. No gets. Can I just get it by looking at it? Let's see. User bus mix. And this is our control bus mix. Type. And let's see if I can get the values off of it. That would be very interesting. Get mix stages. Do I have any formal? Okay. And then for each break bus, I can. So here's where you could get very clever if you wanted to, because if this works, assuming this doesn't crash or something ridiculous like that, because obviously this is preview, so we haven't had a chance to really test it, but you could possibly set it up so that you auto-populate your user mixer with these buses, and then it's just as easy as adding a bus to the mix. That would be very cool. Okay. Let's break this, and we'll do this. We'll do a little is valid before anything else. And then I get this. I don't like doing that. Get name. That's... I hate doing this. I guess in my case, I will... Just to keep it simple, because I see myself black holing on this, I will just do it in the order that I added it, and I'll just automatically assume the order, which is kind of whatever, but music and then sound effects. So so we'll just do this. Yeah, we'll do it like that. That's pretty terrible. But basically, I'm just saying, is this the first one or is it not the first one? And if it's the first one, then we'll just set the set value to this value. And if it's not, we'll set the sound effects volume slider value. But I do like the idea of auto-populating a mixer. I think that's really cool. That's a really cool idea. So hopefully this will work and it won't crash. Yeah, there we go. All right, and then we should be able to lower the music. There's the music. We got sound effects. And if we go to our debug now, au.debug.soundmodulators, and we hit 1 to true, we want the debug on, we can see exactly what's going on with our mix. Here's an example of the table approach. You know, and the mix is the mix, and then we have the generators, which are like LFOs or whatever, and then the final result. Right. Right? Cool, right? And then you can just keep adding mixes. You know, so we've got our default bass mix, we've got, you know, our user mix. We could create one more mix. Let's just make one more mix. Let's do one more control bus mix, and this will be area 1, area A mix, whatever. Or what do I call it? Bus mix, whatever. Okay, get a naming scheme. Do better than I am doing. Okay. And all I have to do is set the things that I want to change, right? So in this case, all I want to do is kill the music. Okay. So we're actually going to make this 0. And I want this to happen over 5 seconds. And we'll go 5 seconds either way. All right. So what's going to happen is I'll just create a little trigger box or something like that. So let's move my starting point. Let's move my starting point over here. Oh, this is the starter. Let's kill this. I think I can just delete that. This should be fine. Yeah. Cool. So here's the starting point. And then what we'll do is I'll make it so that if I traverse to, say, we'll do a trigger box. I'll do a trigger volume. And we'll do it, we'll just go around this sort of area here. Okay. And then in blueprints, in our level blueprint, again, I recommend making a mix manager, but, you know, for now, this will work. When we've got an overlap, and then when we end overlap, And we just want to check that our overlapped actor is sorry, the other actor is in fact our get player character. This should work. Branch. Oops. I think that should work. Okay. And then what we'll do is we will just activate mix, control bus mix. And this will be our area A. And then we're just going to deactivate mix. And then it's going to be our area A mix that we're deactivating. Okay. And that should be it. I think that should do it. Let's just give myself a little bit more space. Okay. And then we can watch debug, sound modulators, modulators. Okay. I walk in. There's our new mix. Right? There we go. Very nice. And then we leave. Oh. We just hit something massive, so we'll have to fix that. But there's a bug. But you get the idea. So that's the concept. And here it looks like I just deactivated every mix but the area A bus mix, which is really funny to me. Audio modulation. What else did we have here? Deactivate control bus mix, controls modulator. That's funny to me. But yeah, basically, that's the idea, and this should be pretty easy in terms of scripting, and I think you can do really clever things possibly with a little mix manager. So I like this a lot better. I like this approach a lot better than the sound class system. But with that said, you can, if you still are stuck on sound classes, or you want to incorporate, you're already using sound classes, you'll see, let's see, there was maybe an option. This is, oh, I guess we didn't have that. Loading override behavior. How's it mix modifiers? Okay, no, I was wrong. For some reason, I thought there was a way to assign it by class, but I must have misremembered that. That's fine. This is the way that I prefer, and what I like is then I can, on the mixing stage, I'm basically just focusing on my bus mixes. Oh, I forgot to mention, which is kind of cool, is the bus mixes. You'll see this stuff: activate mix, deactivate all mixes, deactivate mix, load mix from profile, save mix to profile, solo mix, etc. And what this means is you can actually load and save versions of this mix by profile index, and that'll actually get saved to an INI file, configuration file, which then you can load in procedurally. So you can actually push, like INI files are super easy hotfixes, and so you can push mixes, create mix profiles, or update mix data via configuration file, and then have it load up from the configuration file. And this is also useful because this was originally designed with a live performance in mind. After 2019, when we had the big chaos physics demonstration, mixing for the live theater was a very different experience, because the live theater, the theater that we were in, had a very specific sound to it. Its speakers were very specific types of speakers, and what was optimal for like more general purpose mixing was not optimal for that theater. And so there were a lot of things that we wanted to change via mix that made it very difficult with the old sound mix system, the sound class mix system, as we call it now, because it required doing another package build, which meant that there was a downtime between checking the mix. We would listen to it and we go, oh, I think I have to do this, I think I have to do that, I think I have to change this, I think I have to change that. And we just sort of make notes, and then we would, we'd go down to the green room, and then we'd like try it out, and then we'd push it to the build, and then it would be in the next build, and it would be like 4 hours later, and then we'd be able to listen to it and try it out and see what happened. And that was terrible. And so we've, over the last year, we were really focused on, what kind of things would help us with a presentation like that, because the mix that was perfect for the theater was absolutely not perfect for the floor demo, right? And the mix that was perfect for the floor demo was not perfect for, like, if we distribute the demo, like people could play it at home or whatever, because the needs between all those listening spaces are very different. With this approach, we could have mixed profiles and actually have different profiles based off of the venue, which is really powerful, right? So that's part of it. And then also for like the UE5 demo, along with the idea of live mixing, and you could see that I can tweak values while the game is running. Well, in the same way, I can actually set it up, and like with some scripts, I can hook it up to a control surface. And that's how I mixed the UE5 demo, was I actually hooked it up to control surface, and I had like 16 channels on my fader port. I read in, just like I did with the user mixer, I read in the values from the mix for that zone or whatever, and then I fed them into the fader port, and the fader port adjusted all of its faders to the current values, and then I could use the fader port to adjust all of those volume values, and then I'd hit a button and it would print it out to a profile, and I would just automatically increment the profile so I could A/B them. And that was like, it was probably the fastest mixing I've ever done. It was just such a fast experience, because I'd just play through the area, I'd mix on my control surface, I'd hit print. If I felt like it was moody, like there's like you have moods where you're like, oh, I prefer more ambient version, or I prefer, like, because mixing is not just about optimizing volumes. It's about like the character of the scene and the feeling that you get when you go into that scene, and that is hugely impacted by how you're feeling as a mixer at the time of mixing. What your preferences are at that time. Are you more are you preferring a more ambient mix? Are you preferring a more in your face sound? All those things come into play, and so being able to A/B those experiences with a profile, loading and saving, was just amazing. It was amazing. So I definitely recommend trying it out. Please reach out if you run into bugs, because it's a brand new system. It's still like, in beta. We haven't really tested this refactor at all on anything, but I really wanted to get this video out there so that people could just start messing around with it. And I said I wanted a short video, and this became a super long video, but hopefully it was useful. And yeah, so good luck. I encourage you to play with it. There you go.